All right, guys. So I don't care about the quality of the video. I don't care that it's dim. Because what I'm going to tell you guys has to do with real quality, not surface quality, but I'm talking about genuine quality. I have an Android phone, and Android is Google, programmed by Google, right? And on my Android phone, well, my phone model, like the hardware, is a Pixel, which is also Google. No, there's a Messages app, presumably Google, because it's the default text messaging app. When I search for someone by name, it'll search links, it will search messages, it will search groups, it'll search pretty much everything except for the actual the contact itself. It will not search the contact and list them. So I can type their entire name in, perfectly spelled, and it will list messages where that name maybe shows up, or even maybe shows up in the group set, but it doesn't show me the chat that I have with that person. You see what I mean? Do you get what I'm saying? Now go back and watch my oldest YouTube videos, back from 2009, 2010, 2011, whatever it is. Watch those videos and look how I complained about StarCraft 2 created by Blizzard, and how they basically made this very simple mistake of not, like, removing a feature by thinking that they're adding features, by letting people host a game. Basically, you can select a map and then you host it for other people to join and then play against them, right? So you have like maybe 8 people playing against each other, okay? But you have, maybe say you have 20,000 maps to choose from and only 200 games are going on at once around the world. Well, if you don't show who's hosting a game and you don't give somebody the option to either host or to join the game, what happens is, if they don't show you that information and you have to select the game by selecting the map, then it's like playing the lottery for everyone playing. You either are able to play by how everything is sorted, which means that you're going to have this weird, really synthetic, really strange, like most played maps, which might not even be good. They just happen to have secured themselves at the top of the list, and then it can't change because nobody can really figure out how to play other maps. Or you're going to pick a map, you're going to select it, you're going to say, I want to play this one, and it's going to say, oh, we're smart for you. We're going to decide whether you're going to host or you're going to join. And so they create a game and put you as the host, and then you sit there and wait forever, and nobody will ever join, because anyone who happens to select the same map will see, oh, there's somebody hosting this. But we're going to have to wait for like 40 years to get 8 players. So I'm just going to quit now. And so basically that map never gets played ever. So it's the same thing with Google. They do not care if their stuff doesn't even work. All they care about is, do they get some sort of income? Do they get some sort of money? These big companies, they don't care if they sue you, right? They don't care if you do a good job. What they care about is, do you make them money? You see what I mean? So they'll sacrifice children for money as long as they can legally get away with it. They don't care. Um, but they won't do anything good, create new things, solve world problems, if they don't think they're going to make all the money from it. You see what I mean? And you might not believe me on this. You might be like, "Well, how do you know? You do work at Google." Well, I mean, there's already been people who have worked there that had really high IQs, and they said that the IQ level at the company dropped, and what remained were, instead of like 150 IQ people, there's like 115 IQ people, and they just defend themselves. They just protect their own butts. They don't actually go and create new things and like solve problems. They just figure out how to like blame shift to other people. Okay. So you have this company which said, don't be evil, and they became essentially evil, right? So Well, how do you deal with that? Well, if you're a creative person, you want to create things that we don't have to worry about these corporations taking control and ruining life for us, right? We can start doing things in a decentralized way, which, by the way, we're not. Because remember, my friend showed how there's like 5 fundamental things: API access, other fundamental things on the internet that we do in a centrally in a server based way. So you go on a website, you have to get an API key from the website and then use it that way. And then when you communicate with other people, even on iMessages, right, you're still going through, say, Apple's protocol using their servers. They can, in theory, do man in the middle, and they'll call it end to end. But there's a way to do truly, genuinely end to end where your device and the other device that you're doing some sort of business or communications with um, both generate a cryptographic anchor, right? So you can build everything based on that. And you can basically do that across the internet. You can do that. If we build systems that use that, we can start doing that, and you don't have to worry. The problem with these big companies is when they get low enough IQ, they don't understand that that's the future. So they get so low IQ and so narcissistic that what they do is they start protecting themselves from things that are the genuine future. So they'll actively attack something that's actually creative and good because they think that it's competing with them, which it basically is. But it's like being like it's like being the king of the it's like being the biggest fly on a mound of poop and saying, "Hey, why are they building a golden palace over there? That looks bigger than my biggest pile of poop." Because they're all competing for the bigger pile of poops, and they don't understand that the golden palace is not made of poop, right? It's a different level of good. It's a different level of abstraction, right? So their understanding, their entire history has always been better versions of this piles of poop, and then suddenly you have like a literal golden palace made by humans instead of a fly, right? And then that goes again. It happens again where the guy who ran the best golden palace realizes that you know um you can abstract the concept again, and you realize, oh, there was different versions of the poop, and then you have like a specialty poop thing, right? Which they originally used to be a golden palace, but really it's just a specialty poop, right? And then they see a real golden palace that's made out of actual like real gold metal, right? And so they don't under they the same thing happens over and over and again, and they don't realize you have to get rid of all the old trash, the actual trash. That doesn't mean you erase history, right? That's what the communists do. They don't understand people who want to make a new world that's better. The communists have low IQ. They think that the way to do that is you have to erase history and then like sort of start from a blank slate. That 0% will work. That doesn't work at all. In fact, that actually causes the problems that you had before to probably even be worse the next time around. The way you do it is you actually learn how to cement your history. You learn you learn how to document it and save the history so that it's there, because that's the only way to create a better world that won't repeat the same mistakes. It doesn't work if you do it the other way around, because you're actually in the process, you're breeding all these people who are more selfish, more willing to make the same mistakes, more ignorant, right, to listen to this wisdom and all this stuff. So that's why, having a genuine real blockchain will create a better new world, because it actually preserves the history. It lets you actually prove what works, what doesn't. It proves what's true, what's not. It proves, because it keeps everything accountable, and you start seeing the truth for what it actually is. You start observing the light. You start seeing the truth, and you can start making decisions to say, well, all that stuff doesn't work, and here's the truth about all this, and here's all the certified history of this. We got all this documented stuff, time stamped. We know this is the way out. This is how we learn from that. right? That's how you learn genuine history. That's how you create a new future, a good future, is you actually learn how the history worked and what was actually going on. And you start piling all the evidence and you make sure it's all time stamped so that you can't be messed with. So all these narratives that are false, right? They all fall through. None of them can survive because they're all lies, right? And only the truth, the thread of truth, it starts to be clear. It starts to be determined because you have everything time stamped. You have everything written deeper and deeper into stone, into this impenetrable stone, and you can say this is how we build an actual good future, right? Like I want my video from a long time ago that said, I don't want it erased. I want it to stay because I'm going to eventually show and prove, or it will eventually be seen that it's correct when I said, and I meant what I said, we don't need clean code anymore. And there's people that argue and they say, no, we got to throw out all the people who don't do clean enough code, and we're going to judge whether we hire this person or allow this person to survive based on how clean their code is and blah, 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 blah. And you'll realize all those people are liars and they're all wrong and they're all lazy because they don't realize that you can just edit the parse trees directly. You don't need to use the full stage compilers end to end. So, and I've already figured that out and I've already said it. I've already documented it. So we need to make that history impervious so everyone can know in the future when they look back and they're like, wow, why did these guys always run these compilers and try to neaten up all their code and everything like that? When you don't need to write code as text. You can edit the parse trees directly, and now everything is going to be a formal set of transformations, right? So that's going to explain. I was going to say, and because you have chatbots that even if you did use the code text form, they can just in a couple years after that video came out, it's like those chatbots can clean it up for you. But it's like that's not what I was talking about. I'm talking about the truth, and all these thousands of tens of thousands of little things that I'm judged for by my coworkers, or that I don't get a job because of this or whatever it is. But they're all correct. They're all true. And people think I'm an idiot. They think I'm low IQ. They think I can't accomplish anything. Instead of accepting what I say as truth, I'm going to document all these tens of thousands of things and say, look, I told this person this. I told this company this. I told and just keep documenting it. And then eventually I can prove they are sucking life out of society. They are making decisions which are harmful to others, and I warned them and I gave them all the information they needed. I keep telling them, right? Every little detail. I made a video that explained Google Maps 10 years ago. I said they should not have animations that you have to wait on the animation. Nintendo Switch, they have animations, but you don't have to wait on them. When you click up on the cursor shifts up, and then they have like a lagging animation, but it doesn't slow you down from milliseconds from being able to press right. And that's important because you need to, when you're doing things like saying, hey, I want to go to this address, this is the number, this is done. I just pressed 20 steps where I had to finish each step before I went to the next step, and I need to be able to do 20 of those steps within maybe 3 seconds, not 2 minutes. But I would use these apps like Google Maps or whatever, where it slows down, it waits on the internet, it loads the page, it runs an animation, and just to do a couple things like figure out where I'm going to go next, try to find the right stop. Oh, I can't look up the address. Well, now I'm going to it, so I have to cancel it and then zoom into it because it just, when you cancel it, it zooms out somewhere else. There's 1,000 things when you add them together. It's like, okay, this is taking 30 minutes instead of literally 3 seconds. Right? That's a big difference. And it's the same thing with BSV. Everything's going to be documented. Craig is going to be found to have explained that, hey, it's the Rio Grande versus just a trickle of water, right? It should be 10,000 times cheaper to do transactions than Visa and MasterCard, not 10,000 times more expensive, right? Which is what the small blockers want, because for some reason their brains don't understand basic Bitcoin. Their brains don't understand that basic Bitcoin is double spend checking, and double spend checking is not a mesh algorithm. It's a decentralized algorithm, which means you have a center of nodes, but it's decentralized in the sense that you can cut any one of those nodes that are acting as the center out, or any of the edges, and cut them, and they're still highly connected, right? That's what decentralized means in graph theory. It doesn't mean you're spread out like a mesh. That only makes sense if you're spreading some video file around and you want everybody to have it or something like that, that's a mesh. But a double spell check, that needs to happen all the time, consistently, within milliseconds, which means you need to know within milliseconds if somebody else on the other side of the planet is sending that same coin to another wallet. And the only way you can check within milliseconds is if you have a highly connected network. You can't do all this Caspa stuff where you're like, oh, let's combine the block, let's make the blocks. There's no reason to make blocks faster. Blocks are just the history, right? They're just a way to store the data in the database a certain way. You don't have to check blocks for surety. What you need is good, high quality nodes, and nodes are not wallets. And Craig made that clear, and whoever made this whole small block argument said, oh, small blockers won the war. You did not win crap, because your coin is useless as crap. Your BTC is so expensive. Yeah, you can use it as like some theoretical store of value, but it's using exponentially more energy to do your like mining. So it doesn't make any sense. Because when you do the full math, like when you do the calculation of how much energy does this take, how much value is it providing, it's like the worst. It's like you made the worst invention of all time instead of the best. Whereas BSV is like the opposite. BSV is like the best invention of all time, because it's like, for the amount of energy you're using and the amount of work and effort you have to put in, the value you're getting from it is like really high. It's very useful. So it's like the opposite. And you might say, well, it matters what's, the amount that people are storing. It's like, yeah, and that's probably why BTC has actually survived this long, is because people keep wanting to use it for bigger and bigger amounts rather than more and more transactions, which that's true. I'm not like gonna deny the variable. Like, if you're gonna accept the truth, you accept all the variables involved, right? You don't accept some and then reject. It's like, you don't pick a political side, like right or left. You just pick whatever's true, and that's not going to give you a side. That's going to give you all the set of all the true things, and like the understanding of what's actually going on. It's going to give you the bigger picture, not a smaller picture, right? So it's in optimistically, it acts as a shield. So it could be viewed as providing value in the sense that it's providing, if ultimately BSV is a payment system, it's like, well, then you have like this other system which is acting as like sort of a suck, or what do you call it? Like a sink for like a proof of work sort of market, spreading out the like decoupling the proof of work systems, which needs its own market, from the transaction verifiers, which need their own market. You can't, to create those markets, you can't just start off with like a monopoly easily and then just say like, hey, we're just gonna, like, you could if you provided enough value, but like, you need time sort of to let those things actually go out and like settle and separate themselves. But they'll realize that, though some people just take longer, because like if they don't want to study graph theory, like it doesn't matter, math is math. So like they're gonna eventually realize like, well, when I try to create this lightning network, the same thing happens. We get these big nodes. It's like, yeah, but we told you that already. Like at the very, very beginning, you don't need to practice it to calculate that that's what needs to happen. You just need to realize that math said it would happen, because that's how the network works. That's how like, you can just do some math and figure out what's going to happen. I'm just saying. You don't have to like do everything without reasoning about it. It's like what Tesla said about Edison. He's like, all he has to do is 5% more reasoning or whatever. It's just like, just use your brain, and you don't have to test literally everything. You can literally reason about things to prune how many things you have to test. So this is disturbing to me. The fact that I try to do something on like this text messaging app, and the fact that it doesn't work an intelligent way. Like, it doesn't even work the way that I would, like, if I were to design it, I'd be like, oh, if you're going to type in somebody's name and search for things, it will list not just like the content of the messages, but it will actually show you like, oh, maybe he's looking for a contact, you know. But for some reason they don't add that, and they don't fix it. They don't even think it's a bug. There's so many things out there that people do not consider bugs just because it's like working as developer supposedly intended. Like, I submitted a bug one time to like Mojang about Minecraft because I was like making this thing where you have like the command block, and it basically has a command that says, "Oh, check whether you're basically check whether you're within a range of like two different degrees." So like if you're more than 5 degrees but less than 30 degrees, then it's true. Otherwise, it's false, right? And I said, well, that should work like a circle. So you should be able to say, maybe I'm more than 270 degrees, but less than 5 degrees. And so that's a range. And they said, oh, no, that's not what I get what you're saying. I understand. I get what you're saying. But that's not a bug because that's what the developer intended. I'm like, you're the source of the problem. You're like literally the person who answered that question is like the source of like all the problems that you get in software because they don't even understand how to reason about reality. They're literally they're the reason why everything doesn't work because they're like, that's not a bug. I get what you're saying. Like, you're admitting you understand what I'm saying. And then you're saying, well, that's not classified as a bug. It's what the developer intended. In no way in hell it's what the developer intended. And if it is, then the developer's an idiot. Because the developer, sure, he can intend to make it only as like a line segment and not as a circle. But all you have to do is add a comment, and you realize that missing comments are a bug themselves, because if you're going to add the functionality of treating an angle as a number from 0 to 360, and then you don't add, like, say, by the way, this represents a circle, not a line segment. So therefore, if you're going to use greater thans or less thans, you shouldn't use it in the sense that you're treating this as a line segment, but you should actually write extra code cases so that it wraps it around so that the 0 becomes the 360. So you could say, hey, you are greater than the 270, but less than the 5. And both of those mean the same thing because it's a circle, not a line segment. So if you don't write that code in there as a comment, if you're not expressing that and you're just saying, well, the code uses as a number, it's like, well, then you're the one who's the source of the problem. Because you're saying that it's smarter to leave the number as it is in the code rather than to treat the mathematical object as a circle as the thing that you're trying to represent, and then accepting the fact that the code is just trying to represent that. Like, how can you possibly be that dumb to not realize, like, that's what's going on? You don't understand context at all. Oh, that's not a bug. That's technically just what the developer intended. Okay, well then you should rename you should still keep it there and reclassify the bug as like, hey, this feature is modeled incorrectly, right? You should do something like that, but you shouldn't say, well, I'm just going to remove this because it's not a bug. It doesn't make any sense. Why would how do you understand it, but you still could say that it's not a bug? That's the stupidest thing ever. These people have no comprehension of reality. It's like anytime somebody presents something, it's either true or false. And if it's true, then there's a problem. It doesn't matter if it's technically a bug, according to your weird definition. It's like, it's a problem because you're not modeling the freaking reality correctly. Am I just like rambling about nothing? Like, this is literally this is how everything works. This is the problem that everyone has with whether they're running the government or they're doing anything, running a corporation. Like, you take a vote and they'll accept. They'll be like, oh, if like, they prefer this other candidate who's not a Republican or a Democrat. But we have to go with what the polls say, right? But the polls are using parties, which only exist because we're not using Condorcet votes, because we didn't have computers. So we had to use just everyone gets one vote. which doesn't make sense because the most preferred candidate might not get any first votes, but they might be way above everyone else in a preferential, in a comparison vote. And you even have the math and the people running the algorithms and the websites showing this, and you're still like, well, but that's not the real vote. Yes, it is the real vote. It's more real than your existing vote, because it's actually showing what the people want, versus your existing vote, which depends on parties to even group together. And that's why you have two parties. It's just math. Like if you just look at the math of how the math of voting works, you always will end up with like a two parties system. So, I mean, it's not that hard to figure out. And it's not like what my friend thinks, where it's like, oh, it doesn't matter. You can use kind of different voting algorithms. It'll sort of give you the same thing. No, it won't. It'll give you like opposite results. And it's not just opposite results, but then you compound that. So it's kind of like, it's like if you plant a seed on a planet and on another planet you don't plant a seed, and then you come back later thinking like, oh, maybe one little plant will grow. No, you just planted like the forest will grow on the entire surface of the planet versus 0 trees on the whole planet. This is a big difference, right? It's just, they're going to be two completely different planets because of one seed. You see what I mean? There's just two completely different planets, all because of one stupid tiny little seed. It's the same thing with this kind of stuff. You have to fix things at the deeper level in your mind and comprehension. You can't just act like you're going to fix all these little bugs and like you're doing hard work or something. It's like you're making more work for others by not fixing the things that you should fix, or reporting the things you should report. And the thing that I reported in Mojang, that technically is a bug, because I was like, okay, you want to use logic to argue about this. Well, your code should have comments that define what the model of them are doing. So your code, if it represents a circle using a line segment, it should also have a comment that says, by the way, this is a model of a circle. So if you add functions to this class or whatever, they have to treat it as a circle, which implies that your code that you add to it to do more things, treating it as a circle, have to treat it as a circle. You have to treat that 360 as a 0, and it wraps around. And if you don't, then you're not coding it correctly. And that should be hard-coded in the comments in the original model. So therefore, it would be a bug, because your comments are literally like, it's like programming for the programmer himself. Oh no, it's not. It's there's code, and then there's just comments are just extra BS. Well, then somebody needs to write one stupid little code that says, oh, check if angle is greater than this or less than that, when they first write that model, and therefore all the remaining code that's written has to accept that that code exists, because otherwise it won't work correctly with that code, because you're going to have two different models competing, right? So therefore you can make a comment just by adding like code that hardly is used at all. It's just used once, one place, and you could even put just a debug statement. Therefore now it's technically code, but now it's just a debug function. And there, see, I proved my point. It doesn't matter if it's comments or code, because the debug function is only going to run when you're running a debug call. So what's the point of it being code? So comments are just as valid, or the definition, like the intended structure of the model of code is just as valid as code in that sense, because we're not talking about running the code versus not running the code. We're talking about everything. We're talking about editing the code, or adding to the code, or removing from the code, and it's still working, and it's still being consistent without bugs. So try to argue with me on that. Seriously, you're not going to make any sense. All right, guys, so today I'm going to do work on something and maybe get my car fixed and stuff, and here in a few days going to be going down and having the Feast of Tabernacles here. So just thought I'd make a rant video for half an hour, but I want to know what you think. Am I crazy? Am I right? Am I being ridiculous? Or am I pointing out real problems in society? Real problems with the way people think? Because to me, it's crazy. It's nuts. I like the original Google algorithm, the PageRank algorithm, because it made sense. And we need to go back to that. We need to go back to understanding our problems at a deeper level and starting companies from that. All right, that's what I think. I'll see you guys later. Let's do half an hour here.